Traffic and Parking Advisory Board to order. Good afternoon and welcome. The Traffic and Parking Advisory Board reviews items of interest regarding parking and traffic items. We are an advisory board, and our favorable recommendations today will go before the Oshkosh Common Council. The council can accept or reject any recommendation from this board. If you don't agree with our decision, you can discuss the item with any council member. If the board does not recommend an item, a common council member may sponsor a new ordinance regarding this item. All items require 2 readings before the common council. The first reading will take place on Tuesday, April 25th at 6 p.m., and you will be allowed to comment on the item at that time, though the council will take no action. On Tuesday, May 9th at 6 p.m., the item will be on a second reading, at which time the council will take action. You will again be allowed to speak. For this afternoon's meeting, I will read each agenda item, at which time, if you'd like to speak, please step to the podium and give your name and address. I do ask you keep your comments pertinent to the agenda item. The item will then come back to the board for discussion and vote. The board has adopted a public participation policy which provides 15 minutes for public comment on a first-come, first-served basis. Citizens must provide their name and address and speak on matters related to traffic issues within the authority of the board. Statements should be addressed to the board members and not to staff. Items that are on the agenda should be addressed at the time the item is read, not during the period for public comments. Statements are limited to 3 minutes, and citizens may only provide comment one time, unless permission is granted. All written comments sent to the board will be distributed and become part of the public record. If anyone requires reasonable ADA accommodations, please contact the office. All right, roll call.
Christensen,
Here.
Shazinski,
Here.
Staples,
Here.
Hanson,
Here.
Perlman,
Here.
Wunschneider,
Here.
Hartman.
Here. Pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from our March meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move it.
Second.
Okay, Dan moved, Courtney second. Any discussion? Call the roll, please.
Christensen,
Aye.
Shazinski,
Aye.
Staples,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Perlman,
Aye.
Wunschneider,
Aye.
Hartman.
Aye. Old business. Request for parking on West Whipple Avenue South Side from Oregon Street to Red Oak Court.
Right.
Jim, I think you have some information on that, and
Yeah, so you remember last meeting we talked about this, and I had to, because there's a split in the jurisdiction between the town of Nakaimai and the city in that area. I put a map in your packet that kind of shows that, but we have jurisdiction over like half a half. So the center line's like the municipal boundary, and then it goes from city or from town to city to town as you go down the road. So anyway, just for anybody who wasn't familiar, the issue was that as generic, if that's how you pronounce it, has grown, they don't have sufficient parking. They are building an addition for more parking over on the other side, or I guess it'd be the north side of their property. However, currently there's a lot of vehicles parked up and down both sides of the road here. So the citizens were reporting that they were having difficulty traveling up and down the road, as well as some of the semis were having issues as well. And I was out there yesterday, and it's still heavily parked on both sides. So I did have some discussions with some emails back and forth with a couple of the residents that live down here in Red Oak Court, and then also the town's representative, which is one of their attorneys. And he was on vacation, so he did finally get back to me though, and he reported, as one of the citizens did as well, that the town board had voted to restrict parking on their sections on the south side of Ripple, which is what we were also going to recommend. So this item is coming back again, so I recommend that we restrict parking on the south side of Ripple for the part that's in the city. And I know he did ask me too if we could help them with signage, but I see from some of the photos that the town and or county must have put up some no parking signs there today, that more temporary type signage, but, obviously if we can get a little overlap, we'll see what we can do to help them out as well. And then again, I'm only recommending the south side at this time because I do think that until they get their parking, situation under control with the new lot, that they do need to park somewhere for the people that they got working there. So I think this would be a good compromise. It'll help clear the area at least for, over half of the street. And then once they get their parking lot finished, then we can work with planning and make sure that get those other vehicles into their lot.
Jim, are they actively building this parking lot, or are they just talking about building the parking lot?
No, it's under construction.
Well, then we need a motion and a second on this.
So moved.
Barry moves. Jim seconds. Any further discussion? We had a significant discussion at our last meeting, so I think it was pretty clear what the problem was, and this is a temporary solution until my assumption is once they get their parking lot done, we're going to enforce the fact that we'll then do the other side of the street?
Yeah, well, I mean, we can reevaluate if it's needed or not.
Okay.
If when their parking lot's done and they all park in their lot, then no problem. And then we can address it when it becomes an issue.
All right. Any other discussion? Call the roll, please.
Christensen,
Aye.
Jazinski, Staples,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Herman,
Aye.
Wonschneider,
Aye.
Hartman.
Aye. New business. Request to extend the no parking time on Smith Avenue, south side, from 3:30 to 4 o'clock. Jim, you want to give a little background on that?
So this is, the background on it is that they've changed the school hours at Oshkosh North. So I think when the signage or the ordinance was put into effect, the no parking on the north side, just no parking all the time, so on this side, but the south is, it was meant to be during school hours, so it's 7:30 to 3:30 on school days. However, they currently get released at 3:33. So this isn't gonna solve all the issues. However, Cobus and the school bus company, they pick kids up here in this area, and so they're trying to turn left out of here, and there are vehicles up and down both sides of the street. So they're really having a difficult time getting out of there. That's not gonna solve all their issues. It will help a little bit. I know the police departments was out there based on the complaints and trying to, I observed them one day and he was busy for a half hour on the north side trying to tell vehicles they couldn't be there to move. But then there was a line of cars also on the south side. But I think this will help a little bit because with it ending at 3:30, they just start, lining up and parking here, and it's, technically they can. So again, this isn't gonna solve all the issues, but it'll help at least to restrict the parking till 4 o'clock. That will clear this area out. And then by ending it at 4 o'clock, I know that they use these event fields here as well, so that'll also then allow them to park after 4 o'clock when it's not so congested. So just a minor change to align better with the end of the school day.
Okay. I totally lost track. Did we move this one yet? I didn't think so.
So moved.
Jim moves.
Second.
Courtney got the second.
Okay.
Her hand was up quicker than yours. Any other discussion? All right, call the roll, please.
Christensen,
Aye.
Jazinski,
Aye.
Staples,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Herman,
Aye.
Wonschneider,
Aye.
Hartman.
Aye. Last item today is crash analysis.
Yeah, I got a
Review.
few things to show you here. Might have to go over here so I can see what I'm doing.
Hey, you got the only seat you can't see, right?
So I think this, every year I kind of look at, and our Metropolitan Planning Organization helps me with some of this data. My predecessor started doing this, and I've been doing it since then, but this is all data that comes from the Wisconsin Traffic Operations Lab. They collect all the data from crashes throughout the state, from police reports that get sent into them. Used to be a very manual process, but it's gotten better and better every year. So now between the GIS people at our MPO or our Metropolitan Planning Organization, they can take some of that and put it into a map format, which the state, I'll show you in a minute, also has a pretty nice map. So they help me do this, and I just kind of try to look at where all the crashes are, and then it tells you whether it's motorist, a bicycle, or pedestrian. So I'll start with just the overview. Overall, for the year, the number of crashes were probably about similar to what we had pre-COVID. We had about 1,354 crashes, which is about, in 2017, we had 1,345. So, the number of crashes went down for a few years, obviously with 20 and 21 when we were during COVID. The roundabouts were also introduced in 2012, and what happened after the roundabouts were introduced, the crash numbers went up for a little bit and then they went back down. But the number of injuries and severity went down quite a bit, as you'll see in a minute. We did have so this is just kind of map shows overall, and then I asked them to help me map the top 10 crashes, which we'll get to in a minute. But the number of injuries were down a little bit. We were at 328 in 2022 versus 346 in 21. The number of fatalities was abnormally high in 2022. We had 5. 3 of those were motorcycles, so that was not good. Bicycle and pedestrians, I would say that's about average. We had 14 with bikes and 14 with pedestrians. Those have come down a little bit since, say, the 2017-18 years. We spent a lot, the city spent a lot of money and effort into improving bike and pedestrian infrastructure, especially since I've been here the last 9 years. I mean, we have the bike and pedestrian plan. We've done things like we've installed what they call RFBs, rectangular rapidly flashing beacons, at most recently at the roundabouts off of 9th and Washburn and 9th and Kohler. Previously, we did Murdoch and Jackson, and we did the crossing of the Wild Trail at Summit and Congress. We also have installed new ones on Algoma through the university area with the reconstruction this last summer. In addition to, we have also what they call a hawk signal that's on high at UW Oshkosh. That's one where it actually stops traffic. That was kind of a test, and that one's been interesting, that the university's actually, they have preferred the RRFBs versus the hawk, because the hawk is harder to understand. Vehicles stop and it starts flashing, and then they don't know if they can go or not, and it gets to be more of kind of a hassle with all the kids just are crossing no matter what anyway, whereas the yellow flashing beacons are more like you can just, that pedestrians are crossing, you slow down, you don't necessarily have to stop, but you have to yield to the pedestrians at crosswalk, which I think aligns better with the state law, where yield to pedestrians, not stop. So I think those things have helped. We've also done a number of road diets, as you're aware, if you've been on the committee for a while. We've done a road diet on Murdoch, one on 9th, a couple of years ago at Jackson, which we'll talk about in a couple minutes, and then we're doing one on South Main Street this summer from South Park to Waukau. So I think that's helped, with some of the bike and pedestrian, making those safer. Then what I asked them to help me do is to map the top 10 crash locations. And normally those are at intersections, so we look at the top 10 crash intersections. And I try to look at those in a little more detail. Usually the roundabouts are in the top 10, but that's mostly due to just the volume of traffic. Those are obviously the highest volume traffic volume intersections in the city. So those are usually up there. due to that fact, and it's hard to really do much more to improve those roundabouts, without making physical alterations. So those are hard to address. Like I said, we've done some things like the rectangular rapidly flashing beacons to help with the pedestrians and the bicyclists, because it is a little more difficult for them to cross at those roundabouts. And the other thing that makes it difficult is you're yielding, so you're looking to the left. So if there's a bike or pedestrian on your right, that's still kind of a challenge because you're taught to focus left. So there's still some issues there, but I know the police have their motorcycle patrol that they use for those, to do some education enforcement as well. So the top 10 intersections, like I said, the majority are the roundabouts, including the I-41 and 21. The roundabouts that are just off the highway, those are state jurisdiction, so we don't really have a lot of say on those. However, the ones that are off the interstate, once you get into the city, those are our jurisdictions, so that's how we can do things like that. So then I looked at some of the ones that are actual intersections that, to see what we could do about those. And we'll talk again about Jackson Street. Jackson in New York, there were 13 crashes there in 22. That's a little bit higher. It's normally a higher crash intersection, but this year it was interesting. It was for different reasons. For those of you that are on the committee for a while, remember that we were having issues with left turn crashes a few years ago. And then we restricted left turns during the peak hours, which reduced those greatly. In 2021, then we did the road diet there, and that eliminated the offset turns. And we went from 4 lanes to 3, and that further alleviated the left turn issue. We still don't have a lot of left turn issues. There was only 1 left turn crash in 2022, but a new trend emerged in this last year, and that 9 of the crashes, or 70%, were rear end crashes at that intersection, and there were 8 in 2021. And that is normally one of the negatives of a road diet, but that's not necessarily at intersections. Usually that's when people can't go around the person in front of them and they get impatient and they end up rear-ending the car in front of them. So that, we'll have to keep an eye on that. I know a couple of them were distracted driving. Another possible cause is that we've had, with the middle school, there's been a ton of construction in that area, so I'm thinking that might further have distracted drivers over the last year and a half. So we'll have to see if that trend continues. I mean, good news is rear end crashes are generally less severe than angled crashes, so those are less severe than if you have a left turn crash. And we also have fully actuated the intersection with cameras. We did that with the road diet, which means that basically the main street will stay green unless vehicles come on the side streets that to service the intersection. So that's generally a benefit, and it generally helps with driver attention. But we'll have, like I said, we'll have to continue to monitor that area. I really don't have a good explanation other than maybe with the construction, people were more distracted and/or the construction. The other ones that I looked at were Ohio and 9th. There were about 10 crashes in proximity to that intersection, and about half of those were left-hand turns. However, there are dedicated left-hand turns on Ohio Street, and they're offset with a through curb lane. So that's, again, we get to the left turn issue where it's difficult to see the curb lane. So you got to be extra cautious there. We generally try to eliminate those when we reconstruct intersections, but that area isn't under reconstruction anytime soon. I know that a number of years ago, a road diet was considered in that area, but then there's a lot of opposition due to Lost Font Street parking because there's a lot of apartments and rentals there that don't have adequate off-street parking. And then the other crashes there, other than the left turns, didn't really have a common denominator. I mean, one was, there was some weather issues, a rear end, an OWI. Those are things that, we can't engineer away. So it's something we'll have to keep an eye on. That intersection, we'll have to see. That's the first time I remember that one really being on the radar. So we'll have to see if that's something we need to look at further. Again, on Jackson Street, Jackson and Irving, there were 9 crashes in proximity to that intersection. But the most prevalent cause there were drivers failing to stop for the red light, which again is interesting. There were 4 of those, which was almost half. There were 2 left turns, 1 rear end, 1 hit and run, and 1 backing. Somebody back on the driveway near the intersection. So again, there's not a common denominator. Generally, if you saw like a visual obstruction or something, I could understand that. And we also have actuated that intersection with vehicle detection in 2021. So that generally helps with traffic signal compliance. So it's interesting that there was more vehicles disobeying the signal. Again, one of my thoughts is that distracted driving is increasing, which I think is probably true. However, I'm going to show you something that might suggest otherwise. So anyway, I think the Jackson Street, I looked at that a little further because I know that the board is interested in that since we did the road diet. I think that speed boards and the crosswalks and the road diet, I think it has helped calm traffic. I know that's what I've heard from the citizens. However, we'll have to keep an eye on those intersections with the increase in the rear end crashes. Again, it's a major arterial, so it does have a high volume of traffic, so some crashes are not unusual. However, we'll have to keep an eye on that. I also included a map so you could kind of see the Jackson Street corridor and the number of crashes and injuries. I don't know if I pulled that up here, but let me see once. So this kind of looks at it from 2018 to 2022. 2018, we had 40 crashes. In 22, we had 60, so it's went up quite a bit. But in 21, we only had 29. So again, I don't know how much the construction has played into it. We'll have to see what it is in a normal year. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. And then you can kind of see here, this is the total number of vehicles, this blue line, which went up. This is again 18 to 22, went up, which suggests there's more multi-car crashes. However, that could be again, if you have a rear end crash that could involve 2-3 cars, so that's going to drive that number up. And then the bottom here is the manner of collision, and the number of rear end crashes again is right here. So you can see that's the one that went up the most from front to rear, quite a bit in 2022. And this is the left turn crashes front to side. So again, it's 1 year, so it doesn't make a trend, but it's just something that we'll have to keep an eye on, and especially since that road diet. Again, I think the residents have been very happy with it, as I think Bill and Ross can attest to. I think it has calmed traffic, but we'll have to keep an eye on this to see.
Absolutely.
Is there a time of day they're having? Because the only time I'm on there is 7:30 to 8 in the morning.
Sure.
And 5 to 5:30 in the afternoon. And where the crashes are happening on one side or the other of New York is where the traffic just piles up that time of day. So I think what may be happening is people aren't expecting it to be slowing down 2 blocks before the intersection.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And that's why I'm wondering if it's a time of day thing.
Yeah, we can look at that further and see if that's a good
An
question.
attentive driving.
So, yeah.
So yeah, that's available.
But I've noticed that you back up 2-3 blocks
Yes,
at that
definitely.
intersection, whereas that's not something, if you've been driving it for 50
No.
years, you're used to.
Sure.
I would also guess that a lot of the rear end collisions, the people are just driving too fast.
Or texting or whatever.
Yeah, well, inattentive, yeah. So the speed boards on Jackson there near Stanley, I would say 3 out of 4 cars when they go by, it registers too fast in red, which is good. But there's too many people are still going too fast, and that lends itself to rear end collision.
Yeah, those speed boards my electrical manager has started figuring out he's getting better at programming them, so we try to change the message every so often, so it
Yeah,
doesn't become
well,
static.
We live only a couple of houses away from the Stanley Jackson intersection. And it's a real game to get in our driveway without getting rear-ended. And people coming up behind us just too close. Too close. And they're thinking for us that we're gonna turn on the street, not into our driveway.
Yeah.
And so there you end up with brakes squealing, and so far, we're lucky, so good. But it's calmed traffic, very definitely. Very definitely.
It's a lot easier to pull a trailer down that street. It helps a lot getting in and out of Jackson with the road diet, that's for sure.
The decibels went way down. You could talk in your backyard. The one culprit now is, of course, the motorcycles, crotch rockets. You can hear them all over the city. When they go by, we can hear them all the way over the other side of the river, wide open.
Are we gonna, is there more?
I got something else to show you, but
Okay,
if there's
go
any
for it.
questions on that.
I'll circle back on something
Okay.
else later when we're done.
All right. So I want to show you, this is something that's kind of cool. So the state, and this is actually, I believe that anybody in the public can look at it. They have something that's called community maps. So if you search community maps, state of Wisconsin, this will come up, or not this will come up, and then you can search on dashboards, and that's what this is. And then what you can do, it's kind of cool, you can go by your region, and then we can select, I think I got the, I'll get there in a second, but you can select the city of Oshkosh then. And so what we'll do here is you can look at a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year. We'll look at 5 years, with 2022 being the base. And then I generally exclude deer crashes, and then this will exclude park and private parking lots. All right. So, like I said, when I started, you had to like take their data and try to interpret it. Now this is kind of cool because they're doing it for you. So here, the dark blue is the number of crashes in 22. The light blue is the 5-year trend. So you can see crashes, injuries, the fatals. Like I said, those were up this year, which wasn't good. That's why. And then here it'll show you kind of where the trend is. And then down here, it'll kind of show you some driver behaviors, like here's aggressive, older drivers, teen drivers, where speed was a factor, impaired, distracted. This is what I said was interesting. But again, this is all based on how the officer fills out a report. But if they put distracted driving, according to this, it was down quite a bit versus the 5-year trend. I don't know if that's actually true or not, but based on the reports, that's what it's showing. And then here it's, again, by if they flagged a pedestrian, a motorcycle, et cetera. So overall, the good thing about this is that you can see most of these are green. So that shows that as a city as a whole, we're doing pretty well. Like I said, the fatals were abnormally high, but compared to a 5-year trend, we're doing pretty well in most of these categories. So that's a good thing. So that makes my job a lot easier trying to interpret this data because it's all here and they've done a lot of it for us. So again, like if you go to State of Wisconsin Community Maps, and then you can search a lot of different stuff. Most of it you don't need any type of log. Some of the advanced stuff you need a log on. So like for instance, have a login where I can look at crash reports and stuff, you know, you wouldn't be able to necessarily get into that detail, but you could get this high-level stuff like the dashboards and do some type of high-level informational data you could download, or at least just view it and see how we're doing. So that's what I have.
Courtney, you had something you wanted to circle back on?
Yeah, can we go back to with the orange, red, and yellow dots? Or, well, I guess we don't really have to, but the intersection, the roundabout, that's Brooks Lane and Highway 21. People come down that hill off of like the bridge so fast you can't even get through it or even try to get through it. You usually sit there at the Brooks Lane intersection for God knows how long. Is there any way that we could put up those the too fast signs coming down that hill? Or can we not touch that because it is turning into 21?
So you're talking about heading west?
Well, heading west up,
Over 21?
yeah, into that roundabout that goes onto Amro Road, quick trips on the left-hand side. People fly down that hill. You can't even change lanes half the time because of how fast people. And then they go straight into the roundabout because they can see everyone who's trying. You know, if they're coming or not, or if it's free. So they go faster just to try to get through it. And it's ridiculous how long you have to sit there sometimes.
Rumble strips would just slow them down.
Speed bumps.
Something. Yeah.
That's State Highway 21, so that's actually state's jurisdiction, but
Okay.
I can ask or see what they say.
Something. I mean, it's
It's
you
a rodeo.
try if you even going 25 coming up to it's not fast enough for most people. I mean, it's ridiculous.
I can mention, see what they say.
Okay. And then also again, I'm gonna bring up the West Haven and 21 intersection. The lines are not straight. No one knows where anyone's going. It's a madhouse, and I know that one's also dedicated by the state or whatever. But
So you're talking about the West
the
Haven?
one there's the lights after that roundabout. Then
Yeah.
Emer's Lane turned into West
Right,
Haven.
yep.
That intersection is ridiculous. There's
Yeah, I've talked to him about
I
that.
hate that
before.
intersection so much.
And the thing there is like, more cars are, you have to dedicate one of the two lanes as.
Exactly, and I get that
You know.
100%. But like, could we put some kind of line down the middle? I know we don't like putting lines down the middle, but like dotted line, dashed line to try to tell people at least, you're going straight or what. I don't know how they would do
That's-
it, but
that-
like it's you're head on with people. They don't know if they're turning. They don't know if you're going straight. People don't like using blinkers. It's
Yeah, I can ask him about that too. I mean, I know the city, I can think of one or at least one where we've put the dash lines to show you
Yeah.
which lane you should be in. So I don't think I've asked him about that. I kind of see what they say.
It would just be nice for them to at least take another look at it because I don't even go that way anymore through the intersection. I go around back on Amro Road and go through the roundabout where you're gonna get your head cut off.
And I know that intersection's always, that's one of them that people debate whether it should be a dedicated left turn or dedicated right turn. So
And I get completely why it's a dedicated right turn to get to the highway because that backs up a ton. But then we got to do something else because the intersection to get across, it's slanted.
yeah, I know that area's developed a little bit.
And then also, there's no dedicated on the north side of it saying right or left turn only, because it's double lanes right after that going on south. So then people can be going straight in both lanes. It screws a lot of people up.
Yeah, I know what you're talking
I agree.
Because people
posted
turning
there-
left to go west
Yeah.
from the south, they drive, they go into you can go straight in the center lane. So if you're trying to go straight and they're in your left lane, you have to go around them, cutting into the lane that can also go straight, the right side,
Yeah,
instead of knowing that it's a right turn only to go.
correct.
It should at least be marked off if they're going to be both right lanes or what. That would be a lot more
I know.
helpful than what's
But
going on.
Yeah, if the right lane was straight or right.
Exactly.
And the left lane was turn only.
Then you
it
at
would-
least
It would
don't-
really make things a lot a lot better.
More
a lot
concise.
easier. So you'd, at least you'd have an idea where people are supposed to be going, not
Exact-
necessarily that they're going to.
Exactly. Then you don't
Right.
have to guess every time if people are turning or not.
Yeah.
Can I clarify, though? Are you talking about if you're on West Haven heading south?
Either way.
Okay.
West
Like, 'cause-
Haven
'cause
heading north is already labeled. And
Correct.
That's
It's
just
the other
fine.
way is not
The
labeled.
other way that's not labeled
Correct.
yet. Yep. That's what I'm saying. It's
Okay.
just-
I just want to make clear
Ow.
we're talking about the same side.
yeah. That's why I don't use that
On the
intersection.
weekend. When it's empty.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, I'll mention those two things to him. I actually,
That is a zoo, that
I
one.
grew up around there, and it's never been marked. And then they just redid it, which is great because now you actually have a
right.
second lane to drive in instead of the gravel. But there needs to be marking on it. It's too heavily used to not have the north side as well marked because people are using it to get down the road. People are using it for the Choice Bank. People are using it for Gabe's is really popular now behind in that strip mall and Walgreens as well. And it's a us show.
Yeah. They've had some turnover at the state, but I have a contact now, so I'll check with
Cool.
him and see what he thinks.
Thank you.
So do we have any other staff comments? Or with those, all your staff comments today?
That's pretty much it.
Future agenda requests from anybody? No? All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn then?
Move it.
Dan moves,
Second.
Bill seconds. Do we need to roll call on that, or can we just walk out?
Christensen,
Aye.
Shazinski, Staple,
Aye.
Hanson,
Hi.
Perlman,
Aye.
Schneider,
Aye.
Hartman.
Aye. Well, Courtney, I hope you do return.
Right.
Enjoyed having
Good
you
luck
on
with the
the
decision,
committee.
whatever you
So-
Yeah.
decide.
Thank